Hi, I'm Shivam Vij and I'm a citizen of India, or so I think. These days you can never tell. It seems to be way too complicated to tell who is a citizen and who is not a citizen. What determines citizenship? It's mind-boggling. I always thought I was a citizen of India because I was born here. Yes, of course I have passport and Aadhaar and PAN and voter ID card and so on. But if I was not a citizen of India, which country would I be a citizen of? Hello, I was born here, I went to school here, I grew up here, I know the national anthem by heart, and it's the only national anthem I know. So why is it that being citizen of India is a complicated matter? We are now told that even passport and Aadhaar are not proof that you're a citizen, and you may need to do some more things to prove that you are a citizen of India. Now, how does this work? That is exactly what we'll understand in this video. Now, you must have often heard of those NRI couples who prefer to have their baby in the US or in UK just because that makes the baby eligible for US or UK citizenship. Now, how does that work? We have to thank, or these NRI couples at least, should thank one Dred Scott for this. Dred Scott was an African American slave in the US. His parents had been brought from Africa, but he was himself born in the US, and he argued in 1857 in the US Supreme Court that he should be given US citizenship and he should be treated like a US citizen because, hello, he was born there. But the US Supreme Court did not agree, and the Dred Scott case became a factor in the US Civil War. After the US Civil War, the American Constitution said clearly that anyone born in the US will be a US citizen. End of story. Now, this concept that you're a citizen of India because you're born in India, or you're a citizen of US because you're born in the US, is known with the Latin phrase jus soli in international law. Pardon me if I'm pronouncing jus soli incorrectly. Maybe it's jus soli, because the Latin is not my strong point. However, this concept is very important to understand because it is not there in every country in the world. In India, interestingly, we had jus soli till 1986. What happened in 1986? How did we have jus soli and how do we not have it? Let's try and understand that. When India became a free country in 1947 and was debating its constitution in the Constituent Assembly, there was a debate on citizenship. The founding fathers of the Indian Constitution actually debated who should be a citizen of India and who should not be a citizen of India, a debate that we are having in some ways even today once again. In the Constituent Assembly, there were those who felt that Indian citizenship should be given only by descent. Only if your parents are Indian citizens should you get to be Indian citizen. That is a concept known in international law as jus sanguinara. Now, in the Constituent Assembly in 1947, one man stood up and said, no, we should have a more progressive view of citizenship, and that man was called Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel said that we should not take a narrow view of citizenship. He said, quote, there are two ideas about nationality in the modern world. One is broad-based nationality and the other is narrow nationality. Now, in South Africa, we claim for Indians born there South African nationality. It is not right for us to take a narrow view. Now, what is this South African context? There were Indians who were born in South Africa, but they were not being given South African citizenship. They were indentured labor taken by the British from India, and a newly free India was arguing that those Indians who were born in South Africa should be given South African citizenship by the South African government. So, Sardar Patel said that while we argue that in the case of South Africa, how can we say that in India we will not give citizenship by birth? He felt that that would be a narrow view. Sardar Patel further argued, and quote, I suggest for your consideration how many foreign men and women come to India for giving birth to children to acquire Indian nationality. It is a curious idea that for that purpose you introduce racial phraseology in our constitution. It is important to remember that the provision about citizenship will be scrutinized all over the world. They are watching what we are doing. Our general preface or the general right of citizenship under these fundamental rights should be so broad-based that anyone who reads our laws cannot take any other view than that we have taken an enlightened, modern, civilized view. The citizenship clause, Sardar Patel said, has been taken from the American model, which is more or less consistent with the English. unquote. It's very interesting that Sardar Patel, who Narendra Modi and the BJP see as their icon today, felt that citizenship by birth is an enlightened, modern, civilized view. In 1955, independent India, now with the constitution, enacted its citizenship law, the same law that keeps getting amended again and again, most recently in 2019. The 1955 citizenship law, when it was tabled by the then Home Minister Govind Ballabh Pant, took this view of just solely citizenship by birth. Govind Ballabh Pant said, quote, "The mere fact of birth in India invests with it the right of citizenship in India. We have taken a cosmopolitan view, and it is in accordance with the spirit of the times, with the temper and atmosphere which we wish to promote in the civilized world." As you can see, the founding fathers, Patel, Pant, felt that citizenship by birth was a modern, enlightened, civilized, cosmopolitan, progressive view of citizenship in the global world. The idea is that we are all bound by geography. We are Indians because we are born within the limits of India. So what happened? Why does India not have just solely today? How and why and when did India transition from just solely to just sanguinara? It happened in 1986 under the Rajiv Gandhi government, and the change was pushed by the then Minister of State for Home Affairs, a young man called P. Chidambaram. In 1986, India amended its citizenship law, and it said now that from now on, anyone who is born in India will not automatically be a citizen of India. One of your parents also has to be citizen. The other parent could be foreigner, illegal immigrant, whatever, but at least one parent has to be an Indian citizen. This is how in 1986 India went from just solely to just sanguinara. This 1986 amendment came into force from 1st July 1987, which means that if today the government of Narendra Modi and Amit Shah wants you to prove your citizenship and you're born before 1st July 1987, then you have to show only your documents and not those of your parents. So if you're born before 1st July 1987, you do not have to show any documents about your parents, leave alone grandparents. But if you're born after 1st July 1987, you have to show the documents of at least one of your parents proving that they too were Indian nationals. Now, if only the story was that simple, it gets even more complicated. The citizenship law was amended once again by the government of Vajpayee and Advani in 2003. So why did Rajiv Gandhi and P. Chidambaram change Indian citizenship law from the cosmopolitan, progressive, enlightened, modern, civilized idea of just solely to the regressive idea of citizenship, namely just sanguinara or citizenship by descent? Once again, it was that familiar bogey of the illegal Bangladeshi immigrant. P. Chidambaram believed that India is being overrun by illegal immigrants, the kind of accusation for which even today there is no proof of these millions and crores of illegal immigrants that come to India. This hyper-exaggerated fear of illegal Bangladeshi immigrants who've overrun India by the millions made the Vajpayee government amend the Citizenship Act once again in 2003. It was L.K. Advani who pushed for it. The Citizenship Act now changed the criteria for citizenship and made it even more stringent. The Act now says that if you're born after 2004, actually after 3rd December 2004, then you will be citizen of India only if one of your parents is an Indian national and the other is not an illegal immigrant. So now to recap, there are 3 categories of citizens. One who were born before 1st July 1987 like me, so I will not have to prove my parents' citizenship, only my own citizenship, so I'm kind of okay. But if you're born between 1st July 1987 and 2nd December 2004, then you will have to prove that at least one of your 2 parents was also an Indian national. And the 3rd category, the most complicated one, thanks to Vajpayee Advani, is of those people who were born on or after 3rd December 2004. If you're one such person, then you will have to prove that one of your parents is Indian and the other was either an Indian or at least was not an illegal immigrant. So what are the documents and proofs required to prove in each of these cases that you are an Indian citizen? We'll come to that later, but before that, let us just think about how unfair this is. Let's take a child who was born in India. The child doesn't know whether his parents were illegal immigrants or legal immigrants, where they came from, where they did not come from, whether they kept their citizenship documents, their proofs of birth and so on or not. And today, the government can say, hey, you can't prove that one of your parents was not an illegal immigrant, and therefore we'll strip you of your citizenship. The government will say, just because we cannot tell whether your parent was an illegal immigrant or an Indian, we'll strip you of your citizenship. How unfair is that? And that is why people like Sardar Patel and Govind Ballabh Pant felt that citizenship by birth is a modern, enlightened, civilized, cosmopolitan, progressive view. I'm emphasizing on these words just like Amit Shah emphasizes religion, just like he says Hindu, Sikh, Buddha, Christian. I want to say cosmopolitan, progressive, enlightened, modern, civilized, Sardar Patel. Anyway, and the government cannot prove that you came from any other country, so the government cannot deport you. So the government will put you in a detention center and make you a stateless person. And statelessness, by the way, is a violation of fundamental human rights. The UN Declaration of Human Rights clearly says that every person, every human is entitled to citizenship. Okay, last but not the least, you want to know what proofs are required to prove that you're a citizen of India. So to prove your citizenship, you have to prove only two things if you were born before 1st July 1987, which is place of birth. You have to prove that you were born somewhere within India, and two, the date of birth, which will establish that you were born before 1st July 1987. Now, according to the Citizenship Act, the ideal proof of birth is your birth certificate. However, as we saw in Assam and as the Home Ministry has said, the government might take other common proofs such as maybe your voter ID card, your passport, maybe even your Aadhaar, if you're born before 1st July 1987. However, if you're born after 1st July 1987 and before 3rd December 2004, you will have to prove more than just those two things, more than just your own date and place of birth. You will also have to prove the date and place of birth of one of your parents, and you will have to prove that the person is actually your parent. So you need 3 documents to prove that. So the documents you need to prove your own citizenship, you need similar documents to prove your parent's citizenship, and then you need a document to prove that that person is actually your parent. The Home Ministry recently clarified on this issue of proof of citizenship documents, and I quote, "Citizenship of India may be proved by giving any document relating to date of place or place of birth or both. Such a list is likely to include a lot of common documents to ensure that no Indian citizen is unduly harassed or put to convenience." We'll take some of those claims with a pinch of salt. They also said that illiterate citizens who may not have any documents, authorities may allow them to produce witnesses or local proofs supported by members of community. A well laid out procedure will be followed. Interestingly, on this issue of proof of document, the Home Ministry put out a tweet which it later deleted. What is this deleted tweet? It says, quote, "Indian citizens do not have to prove any ancestry by presenting documents like identity cards, birth certificates, etc. of parents, grandparents dating back to pre-1971 situation." Now, they deleted this tweet, which means that this tweet was not correct. You may be asked, as we just saw in the case of those born after 1987 or 2004, that you will have to prove your ancestry, and that's where the problem lies. In my view, Narendra Modi should go back to just solely amend Indian citizenship law and go back to the idea of citizenship by birth as championed by Sardar Patel. After all, we should take Sardar Patel more than just as statue of unity, but also take his ideas of unity, such as those about modern, enlightened, civilized citizenship.